Daddy, why? Don't shoot me. The words echo through the silence of home on West Acres Road in Joliet, Illinois. A little child, trembling with fear, looks up at the man he calls father. In the next moment, he pulls the trigger. 7 lives lost in the blink of an eye. A family torn apart. This isn't just a story. This is real. This happened. But the most chilling part? The killer was someone they trusted. Why did Romeo Nance, a son, a brother, and a father, turn on his own family? Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind the Joliet family massacre. Welcome to the Inside the Crime Mind. If you're watching right now, do us a favor to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. More jaw-dropping true stories are on the way. To truly grasp the depth of this story, we must first take a step back and meet the people at heart, the victims and the individual who turned their lives into a deadly nightmare. The family of Nances, a family full of love, dreams, and a future that was stolen in an instant. Tamika Nance, a mother, a protector, 47 years old. She had a way about her, a smile that could light up a room, a woman who worked hard to provide for her children, who believed in family above all else. She lived for her kids, for her family. Tamika had dreams. She wanted nothing more than to see her children thrive, to create a safe and loving home. Her oldest son, Joshua Nance, 31 years old. Joshua wasn't just a brother. He was a protector too, a big brother who would do anything for his younger siblings. A kind-hearted man who loved fiercely. Joshua had a future ahead of him. He had a career, hopes of growing his family. But those dreams would never come to fruition. Alexandria Nance, just 20, a young woman with so much promise. She was the dreamer of the family, the one who always had big plans for herself, for her life. She loved the idea of traveling the world, of making something of herself. She had an energy about her that made everyone smile. Her friends describe her as someone who could brighten the darkest days. Then there were the younger sisters, just 16 and 14. They were full of life, full of hope. Their world was one of laughter, school dances, and the simple joys of being a teenager. They had so much to look forward to, so much more life ahead of them. Christine Esters, aunt to the Nance children, 38 years old. Christine was a vibrant spirit. She loved her family, loved them deeply. A second mother to her nieces and nephews. She stepped in when they needed guidance, always there to lend a helping hand, a listening ear. She was the aunt you could always count on, someone who kept the family together. William Esters, too, Christine's husband, 35 years old, a quiet man, but with a heart of gold. He worked hard to support his wife and his family. He had a reputation for being reliable, a man of integrity. He had hopes of a simple life, but one where he could make a real difference, even in small ways. This was a family of strength, a family tied together by love and dreams. But all of that was about to change. What you might not know is that behind every face, every dream, was a quiet tension, a tension that had been building for years, hidden beneath the surface. A troubled son, a family with secrets, a man whose rage would soon explode in ways no one could ever imagine. Romeo Nance, the one who shattered it all. He was 23, and in a twisted turn of fate, he was the one who would destroy everything he'd ever known. The moment that changed everything came when Romeo, in a fit of uncontrollable anger, turned on the people who had loved him the most, his own family. Joshua, Alexandria, his sisters, his aunt, his uncle, and his mother. They were all gone. All of them. The quiet house on West Acres Road, once filled with laughter and love, was now nothing but a crime scene, soaked in blood and disbelief. But before the bullets flew, before the screams echoed through the walls, there were moments, Moments when the Nances had hopes. Hopes for their children. Hopes for their future. Dreams of college, of weddings, of grandchildren. And now, all of it was gone. The shock waves of this tragedy are just beginning to ripple. Stay tuned. It was a cold winter Sunday afternoon in Joliet, Illinois. The kind of day when families gather, the air crisp with the promise of a quiet evening. But inside two homes on West Acres Road, a nightmare was unfolding. Romeo Nance stood at the threshold of his family's homes. His presence was a harbinger of the horror to come. The doorbell rang, a normal sound on a Sunday afternoon. But this time it was different. This time, the sound of the bell was followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps outside. Heavy steps. Unsettling. The door opens. And then chaos. Gunfire erupts. First, a loud crack, then more. The sound of shots ringing out in rapid succession. It's a sound that will haunt this neighborhood forever. One shot after another, tearing through the air, tearing through the family. In the chaos, a child cries out, "Daddy, why? Don't shoot me." The words hang in the air, a gut-wrenching cry. Romeo doesn't respond. He doesn't have to. The sound of another shot cuts through the air. The screams that follow are drowned out by the deafening silence that takes its place. The killings were recorded by a doorbell camera, capturing a chilling exchange with Nance's young child, who asked, "Daddy, why? Don't shoot me," before Nance opened fire inside the family's home. The scene is one of unimaginable horror. The bodies of Tamika, Joshua, Alexandria, and the others are sprawled across the floor. The smell of gunpowder fills the room, mixing with the faint scent of dinner that will never be served. But it's not over. Not yet. Romeo steps out into the snow. He doesn't even look back. He walks away from the wreckage of his family, as if nothing happened, as if it's just another day. But this isn't just another day. This is the day everything changes. What happens next? The horror didn't end there. Romeo, together with his accomplice, John Hanson, they continued the violence. Romeo approached a 42-year-old man unloading groceries in the 200 block of Davis Street. They exchanged words briefly. Then Nance drove away. But moments later, he returned, stopping his red Toyota Camry. Without warning, he opened fire, striking the man in the leg before fleeing the scene. Just 10 minutes later, in the Pheasant Run Apartments complex, 28-year-old Tosi Bakir was found with a gunshot wound to the head. Despite life-saving efforts, Bakir succumbed to his injuries. Surveillance footage captured a red Toyota entering and exiting the complex, linking Nance to crime. The investigation has just begun, but Romeo is already a step ahead. The scene was a nightmare. Officers stepped into the house, not knowing where to start. The silence was deafening, except for the faint echo of their footsteps. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. The victims were sprawled across the rooms, their blood staining the carpets, the walls. Tamika, Joshua, Alexandria, the younger sisters, Aunt Christine, Uncle William. Each one of them had their own story, their own hopes. And now they were all gone. The first thing the investigators noticed, the doorbell camera. It had captured everything. Romeo Nance, standing there, holding a gun. His expression was cold, distant. And then the voice, the child's voice. "Daddy, why? Don't shoot me." The officers stopped in their tracks. The sound of the child's cry was enough to make anyone's heart freeze. But there were no answers, just blood, and the chilling silence that followed. The crime scene wasn't just about what was left behind. It was about what wasn't there. No signs of a struggle, no forced entry. It was clear. Romeo Nance had been trusted. He was welcomed into the homes of his family, and he turned on them. Witnesses were interviewed, but no one had seen anything unusual. A few neighbors heard the gunshots, but no one had called the police. No one had known what was truly happening behind closed doors. Then came the twist. A witness came forward, a man who claimed he had seen Romeo earlier that day. The man said he had noticed Romeo acting strangely, nervous, agitated, and he was carrying a firearm. But he couldn't explain why. Just an unsettling feeling. The investigators were puzzled. Could this small piece of information lead to something bigger? As the manhunt expanded, the timeline became clearer. Romeo had left the scene in his red Toyota Camry, driving south toward Texas. Authorities were on his trail, but Romeo was a master at staying hidden. He switched license plates, changed his route. It was clear he was trying to disappear. Hours passed. Frustration mounted. Where was he? Was he still in the area? Had he slipped through the cracks? The clock was ticking, and the pressure was building. The search took a darker turn. New information surfaced, revealing that Romeo had been in contact with someone just before the killings. John Hanson. The name kept popping up in witness statements. Who was John Hanson? Why was Romeo in touch with him? And was Hanson involved in the killings? Or was he just another pawn in this twisted game? The authorities were faced with more questions than answers. They knew they were on the right track, but the leads kept running cold. The more they dug, the more layers they uncovered. Romeo wasn't acting alone. Someone was helping him. But who? And why? Then, just as hope began to fade, a break. Romeo's red Toyota Camry was spotted the following day at a gas station in Natalia, Texas. About 1,000 miles away from Joliet, Nance was cornered by U.S. Marshals. The distance between the crime scene and this small Texas town seemed to symbolize just how far he had gone to escape, both physically and emotionally, from the devastation he had caused. The U.S. Marshals, relentless in their pursuit, closed in on him. It was clear he had nowhere to run. His options were dwindling fast, and a standoff seemed inevitable. As the authorities surrounded him, it wasn't a matter of if, but when. Then, in a split second, everything changed. Nance, in a final act of defiance or perhaps despair, turned the weapon on himself. He fatally shot himself, ending his life on his own terms. What went through his mind in those last moments? Did he feel the weight of what he had done? Did he understand the lives he had torn apart, the families he destroyed, and the pain he left behind? These questions linger unanswered, lost forever with him. Authorities later speculated that Romeo was trying to flee to Mexico. Was this his escape route? Was he planning to disappear into the shadows, away from the law, hoping to live out the rest of his life far from the devastation he'd caused? No one knows for sure. But as he met his own end, any chance of understanding the full extent of his motives slipped away. Romeo Nance was no stranger to trouble. His past was a trail of violence and broken promises. At 23, he had already been in and out of the system. Arrests, domestic disturbances, road rage incidents, armed robberies. It was clear that something wasn't right inside his mind. But no one, not even his own family, could have predicted what would happen on January 21st, 2024. He wasn't always this way. Romeo had once been a part of his family, a son, a brother, someone who could have been a future, just like anyone else. But somewhere along the way, something changed. And that change didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual descent into anger, bitterness, and violence. The investigators had gathered evidence, piecing together Romeo's violent past, his history of criminal behavior. And yet, the biggest question lingered. Why? What pushed Romeo to kill his family in cold blood? What turned him from a troubled young man into a killer? Romeo's own words would offer some insight, though the truth was still hidden beneath layers of fear, resentment, and confusion. Romeo didn't just kill his family. He destroyed them. Romeo's motive, as chilling as it was rooted in a lifetime of unresolved anger. His family, the ones who tried to love him, were the first victims of his out-of-control rage. But the motive didn't end there. After the murders, Romeo didn't just flee. He continued his spree. Random killings. Innocent people. No one was safe. Authorities later uncovered that Romeo had been researching escape routes. He had planned this for days. But why continue the violence after he had already destroyed his own family? The answer, some believe, lies in his complete disconnection from humanity. Romeo wasn't just trying to escape. He was trying to erase his own existence, and everyone who had been part of it. His final act, Taking his own life before facing justice was his way of completing the destruction. No remorse, no chance for redemption, just an end to a life that, in his mind, was already over. In a twisted way, Romeo Nance had taken control of everything: his family's future, his own fate, and the lives of strangers who crossed his path. The impact on the Joliet community, it's heartbreaking. The streets that were once filled with the hum of everyday life are now shadowed by grief. The massacre didn't just shatter one family. It rocked an entire town. People were left asking, how could this happen here? Mourners gathered at Victory City Church, a place meant for peace, not pain. The service wasn't just for the victims. It was for everyone who felt the sting of what happened. People from every corner of the town came together, offering prayers, condolences, and support. You could feel the weight in the air, like the whole town was holding its breath, trying to make sense of the senseless. And it didn't stop there. Strangers became a lifeline. Local businesses, neighbors, everyone pitched in. They raised funds to cover the funeral costs. Because when tragedy hits, it doesn't just steal lives, it drains everything. But even as they gave, as they mourned, the question lingered. How do you heal from something like this? How do you rebuild after such destruction? The pain runs so deep, and yet, in the face of it, the community stands strong. They're united in their sorrow. Yes, but in that sorrow, there's also resilience. They won't let this darkness define them. They will remember, they will grieve, but they will also rebuild. Because at the end of it all, it's not just a crime that leaves its mark. It's how you rise after it. Stay with us as we continue to search for answers and dive deeper into the tragedy that unfolded in Joliet. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. A community torn apart by tragedy was now watching as the justice system tried to make sense of it all. The man responsible for the murders, Romeo Nance, was dead, leaving behind a trail of broken lives and unanswered questions. But the case didn't end with his death. No, there were still others involved. John Hanson, Kylie Cleveland Singleton. The aftermath of this massacre would continue to play out in court. John Hanson, Romeo's accomplice, stood at the center of the legal battle. He was charged with multiple counts of murder and conspiracy. The evidence against him was damning. Witnesses who placed him at the scene, the ballistics evidence linking him to the killings, and his role in assisting Romeo in the aftermath. The prosecution's case was straightforward. Hanson had been with Romeo during the murders. He had helped him dispose of evidence. He had been a willing participant in the spree of violence. But Hanson's defense was unexpected. His lawyer argued that Hanson had been manipulated by Romeo, that he had been under duress during the entire ordeal. The defense claimed Hanson had no real control over his actions, that he was following Romeo's lead out of fear. It was a classic defense, but it did little to convince the jury. The key moment in the trial came when Hanson took the stand. His testimony was filled with contradictions. He admitted to being involved in the killings, but claimed he didn't fully understand the consequences of his actions. He expressed remorse, but was it enough? The trial lasted for weeks, the courtroom becoming a battleground for justice. Finally, the jury delivered their verdict. John Hanson was found guilty on all counts of murder. The judge handed down a harsh sentence, life in prison. The case didn't end there. Kylie Cleveland Singleton, Romeo's girlfriend, she was accused of obstructing justice by giving false information during the manhunt. Was she protecting him? Or was there something more sinister at play? It's hard to say. Her charges were serious. She pleaded not guilty, but the weight of the situation hung over her. She was placed under home confinement, while the legal system figured out where her involvement began and ended. The moral questions were never far from the surface. Was the punishment enough? Could anyone truly be held accountable for something as unfathomable as the Joliet massacre? And the bigger question lingered. What does justice really mean when the lives taken can never be returned? This tragedy forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our society. The mental health crisis is real. For far too long, people like Romeo have fallen through cracks, their struggles dismissed or ignored. And the system that is supposed to protect us from violence has failed in many ways. How many more lives will be destroyed before we finally address the root causes of violence and mental health issues in our communities? The Nance family's murder wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a failure of the system, a failure to provide the care and support that Romeo so desperately needed. But it was also a failure of the community. How many times had Romeo been in trouble before? How many chances were missed to help him? As we wrap up this heartbreaking story, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? How can we prevent such tragedies in the future? What more can be done to address mental health and violence in our communities? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep this conversation going. Together, we can raise awareness about the real issues that lead to violence. Together, we can work towards a future where tragedies like this are prevented. If you found this story powerful, please subscribe, share this video with others, and raise awareness about mental health and violence prevention. It's time for change. It's time to make sure that no more lives are lost in silence. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.